Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So today we are going to be doing another Russian sewing tutorial. Today we're going to be doing this dress, which I'm wearing right now. This is the VIKI SEWS Gloria dress pattern, and it's gorgeous. One of my favorite. I've already made 3 already. This is one that I made last month. I put it up to you guys in Instagram, and you guys said that you wanted to see a tutorial of this because I think a few of you have already bought this pattern. So here we are. So if you guys are ready to do a sew along with me on this Gloria dress, then keep watching. So as far as sewing skills goes, this is probably for like an adventurous beginner. I only say that because you need to put in an invisible zipper and you need to do some shearing. So shearing is quite easy to do. I will also put down below some tutorials on how to put in an invisible zipper. But if you're ready to tackle those 2 things, then you should be absolutely fine. Everything else is just like sewing in straight lines. So for this dress, I use this fabric here. This is quite a lightweight crepe. I like using crepes because I like the way that they feel on my skin. I like that they're quite drapey, and also like the print is pretty cute, no? Just bear in mind that if you are going to use a lightweight fabric, it might be more difficult to sew and also more difficult to cut. You need to make sure that you are cutting precisely because they can get misshapen and move around. So if you decide that you want to make this out of a silky fabric, take the necessary precautions to make sure that that fabric does not move or grow or anything like that while you're cutting and while you're sewing. So like use your pins, use tissue paper, whatever you need to do. But in terms of what kind of fabrics you can use for this dress, I would say the drapey fabrics are best, like a viscose or a rayon or like a cotton that's got some sort of like silky drapey feel to it. They will really work. You can go for the stiffer fabrics if you want, but it won't give you this kind of same like draped feel. It will be stiffer. You might get more of a puff in the shoulders, and the dress will look the same, but it will feel different. So it's completely up to you how you sew this up, but just like a few pointers in case you're looking to get the same kind of look as what I've got here. You're going to need about 2 to 2.5 meters depending on your size, and you're also going to need some edge tape. Now in the last pattern that we did, VIKI SEWS patterns used edge tape. This is basically just like interfacing in a strip, and it helps you stabilize seams that might get a lot of wear and tear or seams that might have a zip on it, stuff like that. If you don't have this, you can just use some normal interfacing, and if you don't have any interfacing, well, you're going to need some for the actual pattern, so get some interfacing. But if you don't want to use extra interfacing, you can use stay stitching because it basically does the same thing. It reinforces those areas so that they don't stretch, they don't move, they're completely stabilized, and then you can carry on sewing with them. The next thing that you're going to need is some shearing elastic. Shearing elastic is basically elastic string which is on a bobbin that you would put in your sewing machine, and when you sew with it, it will allow you to create stretch on something that is not stretchy. So you will need that in a color that doesn't show up on the other side. So this one is white, but I also have it in black as well, and there are loads of colors that you can get. If you want to get a color that's complementary to your fabric, you can do, but because the elastic part is usually on the inside, it doesn't matter too much. So you're going to need to do that, and you'll see in the tutorial how I do it, and you can go ahead and do the same. I will also put some tutorials down below from other people on how to share fabric. You will also need a invisible zipper. You'll need one that's about dress length, so anything from about 19 to 22 inches should probably work, depending on how long or short your torso is. I use the 22-inch zipper only because like I've got all of them are pretty much the same length, and if it's too long then I will cut it down, but it kind of worked perfectly for me. So make sure that you have something that will go past your waist and into your hips, and it will make it a lot easier when you unzip your dress to kind of shimmy it over your hips and zip it up again. So that's why we need a nice long zipper. And that's pretty much it. Apart from your matching thread and your sewing machine and your scissors and your pins, all that normal stuff, that is everything that you're going to need for this pattern. So shall we get sewing? Let's get sewing. Okay, so before we get started, I'm going to go through all the different pattern pieces so that you know what to expect when you start cutting out your Gloria pattern. As far as patterns go, it's pretty simple. You've got your front pattern pieces and your back pattern pieces and your sleeve pieces, and that's pretty much it. So let's get going. So I'm just going to put these to the side so you can see them. So the first bit here is the bodice back. As you can see, there is a dart that you will need to transfer onto your fabric. Make sure you transfer that middle line because it will make it much easier to kind of fold and sew. This you want to cut 2 in your main fabric. Okay, so this next pattern piece is the bodice front. As you can see, there are two darts here. One is actually a really weird shaped dart where it's kind of straight on one side and curved on the other. So make sure you mark that on your pattern piece. And then we've got a bust dart, a side bust dart here. This is going to be cut on the fold so you have one whole piece and you don't have a seam in the middle. So make sure when you cut, this bit is placed on the fold of the fabric, and then when you open it up, you will have like one big piece. So you will just need one of these cut on the fold. The next two pieces that we have here are the facing pieces for the bodice. So you've got the back facing, which as you can see matches the neckline of the back bodice piece, and you have the front facing piece which matches the front piece here. So you'll need to cut this one on the fold, so you'll only need one piece, and this one you will need two pieces. And for both sides you will need interfacing for both, so you'll need two interfacings, one for each side, and you'll need to cut one interfacing on the fold so that it covers all of this. Okay, so the next pieces we're going to get onto are the skirt pieces. It is a very simple skirt. You've got your skirt front and your skirt back. The skirt front is cut on the fold and it has just one angled dart here. So as long as you place this part here along the fold, you will have one piece with two darts. So you just need to cut one on the fold. For the back piece, again, this is still very, very simple. You have one large dart here at the back and you need to cut two in your fabric. Okay, so finally we're going to get on to the sleeves. Now, I accidentally burnt the corner of mine because I had a candle that was burning a little bit too close to my project. Yes, that should be squared off. So let's start with the actual sleeve. So this is the sleeve, and as you can see, it's nice and spread out, which gives you that nice puff ball. Make sure that you cut two in your fabric here, and then you'll see these like wiggly lines at the top and the bottom. At the top it means to gather, and at the bottom will also mean to gather, but I will show you a good way of doing this. Now for this last piece, you are going to cut two of these, and this is the cuff that is going to be at the bottom of the sleeve, and this is what we're going to shirr with shirring elastic. So as you can see, it's got lots of stripes on it, and that is a guide for you to mark onto your fabric of where to sew in those straight lines so that it can all be like shirred together. And yeah, you're going to need to cut two of these, one for each sleeve. So those are all the pattern pieces, really, really simple. So if you go ahead and cut those and get all these little markings and symbols transferred onto your fabric, we can get with the sewing. So the first things that we want to do is prepare our facing pieces. As you can see here, I've already interfaced mine on both sides, and this is what it should look like. The next thing you want to do is turn it to the wrong side like this, and then we're going to use our edge tape to reinforce this corner here, and this inside line here, because this is where we're going to stitch our facing onto the actual bodice piece, and we want to make sure that these areas here are nice and secure and they don't stretch. If you don't have any edge tape, you can use a row of stay stitching and it will do the same thing. Okay, so the next thing that you are going to want to do is close all of your darts. Now, every piece apart from the sleeve pieces have darts in them, and here you will see that I've already pinned them all together, ready to sew. So this is what your bodice, front bodice should look like. Your back bodice will have a dart on each side, like so. And then your skirts will also have one. So once you have pinned all of your darts together, now it's time to go ahead and sew them closed. So once you finish sewing all of your darts, make sure that you press them so you can get a really nice smooth finish on the other side. Press your bodice dart seams downwards and then these ones towards the outside. And then you want your back pieces to also point towards the outside. The same with your skirt darts, you want them to be pressed towards the outside so that they match the seams in your bodice when they are sewn together. Okay, so on to the next step. So you want to grab your front pieces and your two back pieces, and we're going to put them together right sides facing. So it's going to look like this. what we're going to do is stitch them together at the shoulder seam and also at the side seam at 3/8 of an inch or 1 centimeter. So we're going to do that, but we're also at the same time going to do the exact same thing with our front skirt piece and our 2 back pieces. So you want to put them together, pin down the sides. Let me just find the other back piece. So you want to put them together, pin down the sides, and then sew these 2 side seams at 3/8 of an inch or 1 centimeter. You've sewn your skirt piece together and your bodice piece together, take it to the iron and press these seams so that it's laying nice and flat. Bodice piece, and you should have your skirt pieces and they should be nice and pressed. So next thing we're going to do now is join the top to the bottom. This is all coming together quite nicely. So what you want to do is lay down your front pieces. So you should have your 2 darts here, you should have all of your marking and notches already on here, and then you get your bodice here. Now we want it to sit like this, so in order to do that you want to lay them right sides together. Now these 2 darts in the middle should match with these 2 darts at the bottom of your bodice. So starting in the center, you can pin them together at the 2 center darts, making sure that when they're sewn together, that dart line will go straight down through the middle. Then you can go ahead and match side seam to side seam, and then you can match dart to dart and then end to end, and you want to do that all the way across the top. Once you've done that, then you can then stitch across at a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance or 1 centimeter straight across the top. So when you're done, you should have something that looks a little bit like this. You've got your top piece attached to your bottom piece and all your side pieces together, and you've essentially got the dress. It just needs doing up at the back. So we're gonna just like do a little bit of trimming, trim all of these threads, and then you can press your seam down towards the skirt. Now it's at this point that I would say if you're going to finish any of your edges, now is a good time to do this. So if you have a serger, now is a good time to serge your side seams, serge all of these raw edges so they look nice and pretty on the inside. I waited until now because now that the whole dress is basically one piece, you can go across the middle and you can go down the sides and you can go at the ends and serge or finish everything to begin with. Okay, so you should have your dress here ready to go on to the next step. We've pressed our seams downward and we've finished all the edges. We need to reinforce the center back so that it could be ready for us to put an invisible zipper in. And if you don't have any edge tape, then you're going to stay stitch all the way down to the notch, which is on the skirt. So if you go down from the center, you'll see that about halfway down the skirt back, there should be 2 notches. So that is where you want to reinforce all the way up to there. Just to let you know, this edge tape also comes in black. So if you are thinking of buying some and you know that you're going to be using dark colors, you can get that. I didn't actually order any, but now like I kind of wish I did. So yeah, so this is what it will look like once you put your edge tape. And then the next thing we're going to do is add our invisible zipper. I don't have any tutorials on how to put an invisible zipper, so I will link some good ones below. Okay, so in terms of lining up your invisible zipper with your dress, make sure that the very most top part of your zipper, so the bit that isn't actually joined onto anything, is lined up with the very top part of your dress. When we later add the facing, you will need that 3/8 of an inch space to be able to sew straight across and make sure that the zipper stays. And then once you flip your facing to the inside, you'll then be able to completely conceal that top part of the zipper. So just make sure that it's all lining up, otherwise you won't have any space to sew across and you might damage your needle or break it because it hits the metal. Okay, so as you can see, I have added the zip. That's what it looks like on the inside, and it zips up nicely, and as you can see, the side seams are aligned. So as you'll see, the bottom of the skirt is still open. So with the zipper closed, we're just going to turn this inside out. We're going to line up these two bits of the back of the skirt, and then we're going to stitch 3/8 of an inch all the way up to where the stitching of your zipper stops to close that edge completely. So now that you've sewn up the back piece of your skirt, you want to press those open like how it will look here. The next thing you want to do is to make sure that this zipper is not bothering you on your back and that it's not flying around. This is how the zipper is going to look on the outside, but what you want to now do is flatten this out and stitch down the zipper tape to the seam allowance. So just like a stitch that kind of sits in the middle here all the way down, and make sure it sits nice and flat on your back. Now, I showed you in the Deborah tutorial how to make a little fabric tab on the end so that it sits nice and flush against your skin and it doesn't irritate you. It's quite simple. What you need is just a little scrap of fabric that's about 2 inches by 1 inch. So with the right sides facing the zipper, you're going to sew across the edge, and then you're going to flip it back and to the inside, and then you're going to sew again. When you're sewing the zipper down towards the side seams, you can catch those last 2 edges and it will sit nice and flush. I'm going to go and do this off camera, but if you want to see how to do it, I will link the Deborah video and it shows you exactly how I did it, and you can do that so it's nice and flat against your skin. Okay, so at this point, you actually have a dress. It is not finished, but if you want to try it on for size, now is a good time because you can still kind of make alterations on the side seam. So if you want to try it on, now is a good time to do it. But if not, let's get to the next part. So now we're going to work on our facing so that we can add it to our bodice piece. What we're going to do now is flip this over so that this is right sides up, and then we're going to join these at the shoulder seams here, like so. And we're going to do that at 3/8 of an inch, and then you should have one large piece. So we're going to actually put our bodice and our facing together. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to start from the back, move all the way around to the front, and then finish at the back. So taking your facing pieces and taking your back of bodice, you want to make sure that the zipper is open. What you want to do is fold out that seam allowance like that, and that is how we're going to start the sewing. So you want to get your facing piece and you're going to make sure that they're right sides together. So just trying to figure out which side it is. So it's going to go like that and then all the way round. You want to line up the end, this end corner here with this end corner here. It means that your zipper is going to be sandwiched in between, and you're going to just pin them together so that they stay. So your zipper should actually start about 3/8 of an inch down, and then what we're also going to do is pin this together like that. So that should be a nice corner, and when we stitch, we're going to start here, we're going to stitch up, and then we're going to go across. So when you flip that out, all that's going to be left is your really nice clean zipper and a nice clean edge. So once you've pinned that side, you can then go around matching all the corners and pinning your facing all the way round to the other side, where you will do the exact same thing on this side by folding that out here and pinning that on this corner. Okay, so as you can see, I have stitched my facing on. The next thing to do is we're going to clip into all of these corners. So you're going to snip right up until the stitching, but not through the line of stitching. This will allow us to be able to turn it to the inside and it to lay flat. For these two back corners, you want to snip across the edge here so that you get a nice point, but not through the stitching. So we're just going to snip this corner and snip this corner. Now that you've snipped and clipped, you can then turn it to the right side just to check and see how your zipper is looking. So if we turn these two corners, you'll see that you've got quite a pretty little corner, and then you should be able to close this up and it be right at the top. So that's what we're looking for, basically. Okay, so now that we know that all works, the next step would be to understitch. If you can see here, this is the facing, this is the sleeve, and you want to just kind of press it so that this is that way and this is that way, and you want to press this seam towards the facing. So we want to do that all the way around. You want to press the seam so that the facing is facing that way. What we're going to do now is go to your machine and you're going to stitch really close to the edge on the facing side, catching that seam allowance so that it sits on this side. When we finally fold over the facing so that it faces the inside like this, that little row of stitching is going to keep everything to the inside and stop it from rolling forwards. Okay, so once you've understitched, you should be able to flip your facing to the inside and then press it so that you have yourself a really nice bodice. So before we move over to the sleeves, the last thing you want to do with this dress is hem it. So the easiest way to hem the bottom would be to do a double turn. If you don't like doing that, you can of course use some binding. You can sew the binding on the outside and then flip to the inside and sew. For this case, I'm just going to do the double turns. I'm just going to fold it under to the inside 3/8 of an inch, then I'm going to sew all the way around. I'm going to fold it one more time at 1/4 inch and we're going to sew again, and that will be the bottom of the dress done. But if you have a different way that you want to hem, feel free to hem any way you like. It's just hemming. As long as you only really take up about 5/8 of an inch, you should be fine in terms of the length of the dress. Give this a nice press and then put that to the side and we can work on the sleeve. So we are going to start on our cuffs and turn them into nice shirring cuffs. Before we do anything, we're going to hem the bottom edge. Now you'll know which is the bottom edge because the top edge should have a notch in the center. So you want to hem the other side, and you can do this by folding over twice, and you want to do this before you start shirring because it will be a lot more difficult to do it afterwards. Okay, so you should end up with a nice clean edge, and this is going to be the bottom of your cuff. So when you start shirring, you should have your elasticated thread in your bobbin. What we need to do is take out our normal thread and we're going to put in our bobbin thread, and we're just going to make sure. Okay, so we've put in our bobbin thread. And you should, so I don't, but you should have all of your lines that you transferred from your pattern piece to your piece. Now I've done this a few times, so I'm just going to eyeball it, but if it's your first time, it really helps when you have a guiding line to sew on. So in order to do this, you're going to need to use a straight stitch. So I'm going to have a straight stitch, and then you're also going to need a really long stitch length. So you want to go down to your stitch length setting and go to the longest that it can go, which for my machine is 5mm, and I think for a lot of machines it's the same. Now I'm going to start on the edge that is not hemmed, and I'm going to make my way down towards the hemmed edge. What I'm going to do, just to make things a little bit easier for me, I'm going to leave a blank area at the end so it's easier for me to sew up together. I'm going to start with a little back stitch so that the stitch doesn't go away, and then we're going to just go in a straight line and then stop with a locking or a back stitch at the end, and then we're just going to keep doing that same line over and over again until the whole thing has been shirred. So as you can see, I've just done one stitch and you can already see how it's starting to get all stretchy and gathered. So we're going to do that in lines all the way down. So you're going to follow your guidelines until you get down to the hem. So once you're done, you should have something that stretches and looks like this on the inside and that on the outside. So I'm not sure how well you can see, but you'll see that it's all nice and gathered, and it should have pretty good stretch to it. So once you've done your two cuffs, give them a quick press, just pressing down, making sure that these gathers stay nice and neat. And now we can go on to the main sleeve. Okay, so you have your sleeve here and you have your cuff, and what we need to now do is gather this bottom edge so that it fits into this cuff here. So you should still have your shearing elastic in your sewing machine. So what we're going to do is just do 1 or maybe even 2 rows of shearing just right here at the bottom, and what that will do, we'll gather this in and then we can sew these two together, and you want to do that to both sleeves. Okay, so once you've added your shearing to the bottom of your sleeve, it should be nice and gathered like this, and this should make it nice and easy for you to add your cuff to it. So you should have one edge which is nice and hemmed, and the other end should have a little notch in it, and you're going to match this notch to the notch that is on the bottom here. You're going to lay them right sides together. You're going to stretch this out so that it fits here, and you're going to pin and then sew at 3/8 of an inch using your normal thread. So you need to take the shearing thread out of the machine and swap it back with your normal thread so that we can sew this together. So now you should have 2 sleeves that look like this, almost done. What you want to do before we go on to the next step, you will want to finish this edge here. Up to you how you finish it. You can use a serger, zigzag stitch, triple zigzag stitch, overcast stitch, whatever you want to just clean up this raw edge here. Okay, so before we turn these into sleeves, we need to make these top bits gathered. Now you can put your shearing elastic back into your machine. You can do 1 row of shearing from notch to notch, or you can use a basting stitch and do 1 or 2 rows and just kind of pull it by hand. So I've already switched my thread, so I'm just going to do the 2 rows of basting stitches. You should see that there is 3 notches, a center notch and 2 side notches here. You want to go from side notch to side notch, and that is where you're going to gather. So when we put this onto the dress, you got a nice gathered top. So you can't see very well, but I've got 2 rows of basting stitches going across here. What I'm now going to do is grab the top 2 threads like these. I'm just going to gently pull them and just gather this top edge. So once you've gathered the top and you've added everything is all good to go, you can then fold it in half like this and put right sides together all the way down and stitch down here at 3/8 of an inch, and then you should have a fully formed sleeve ready to go. Okay, so you should have 2 cute sleeves like this, and we're going to do the last thing now, which is to add these to the bodice. Okay, so we're getting to the final step. So this is the armhole, this is the sleeve. There should be a notch here just over the armpit, and you want to match that notch to the front notch on your sleeve. So this is where we start. So instead of matching there first, normally I go with the side seam to this side seam. So you start with that, so you know that that is nice and clean. You do it right sides together, and then you pin that together. So you should have something that looks like that. Now you can kind of put your arm through the armhole, grab the top, and then kind of flip to the inside, and this should help you pin everything else. Starting at that armhole side seam, then going around and matching notches. So there'll be this side notch, the shoulder seam will match with the center notch, and there should be another notch next to it which will match the side notch that you made, that you gathered, and the sleeve should fit in pretty perfectly. So once you're going around this shoulder bit, make sure you have the sleeve, the bodice, and also the facing so that they're all like together, because if you leave the facing out, it will start flapping and the shoulder will look really bulky. So now is also a good time to make sure that the gathering that you did at the top is evenly distributed. You'll see as you match the notches how close the gathering should be. Once you have done that, then you want to sew around at 3/8 of an inch or 1 centimeter. So as you can see, I've sewed it up, and then when you turn it to the right side, after giving it, it's a bit wrinkled at the moment, but after giving it a really good press, you have a sleeve. that puffs up at the shoulder. It's nice and puffy here, and then kind of cinches in at the bottom. So make sure you do this to the other sleeve. Give it a really nice press. Make sure these seams are nice and flat, and then go ahead and trim and finish this inside with your zigzag stitch or your serger or your triple stitch, whatever you need to finish. And then that is it. You are pretty much done. You might find that the front bit might flip up a bit. What I have done to combat this is get a little bit of hemming tape, you know, like Wonder Web, and just kind of put some underneath here and then iron it so that it sticks to the inside, and then the facing kind of just stays down. So if you have any problems like that, you can just use a little bit of the Wonder tape or hemming tape just to kind of like iron it down and flat. But other than that, once you've put on your other sleeve, you are all finished. So I'm going to get this other sleeve done, and then I'm going to try it on and show you what it looks like. Okay, so that was the tutorial, and I hope you guys enjoyed watching it, and I really hope you guys enjoyed the end product. That is literally the 4th dress that I've made. I've got to stop now, otherwise my entire wardrobe is just going to be these Gloria dresses. But like, I don't know, can you blame me? It is a cute dress. I think for the next Russian video we will try another pattern company. Obviously I will go back to VIKI Sews because I have literally 30 of her patterns because they're great. So at some point we will go back, but if there is another pattern from another pattern company that you guys are interested in seeing, let me know in the comments. I would love to hear from you. So I guess that is it. That is the end of the video. Thank you guys for watching to the very end of the video. If you enjoyed this video, then hit that like button. Let me know what you think in the comments. Have you made this pattern? Are you gonna make this pattern? What do you think of my version? Do you like this green one? Because I love it. And if you haven't already, then subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video. See ya.